next business more. Next year, two cities around the world. But sit there, nice tables, big area, and food's good. Lovely. Well, fruit.
Okay. Okay. So why don't we continue where we left off yesterday? It is forbidden for witnesses to sign a contract where they haven't verified the facts of the contract. You can't just take someone's word for it. And so it's the example that we gave is signing a promissory note where you don't know whether a loan has been made. But we're talking about a case when we say that it's usher when the Eidim themselves did not make a kinyan with the debtor. But if they already, we saw this yesterday, if they already if the witnesses, one of the witnesses takes out his handkerchief, gives it to the debtor, and says, with this handkerchief, you are indebting yourself to Ruvain. So, afal pi shelo yalvebo, the nenula yad hamalve achar kama yamim, he says it's a valid, they are witnessing a transactional indebtedness, okay, and therefore they're allowed to sign the shtar. Today, even though it doesn't come into the possession of the malva until many days later, because as soon as they take possession, as soon as the debtor takes possession of the handkerchief, he's generated a debt even without a loan. Okay. He says you cannot sign on a shtar unless the loan has already transpired. He says, well, as we'll explain in the biurim, this really needs a little bit more analysis. Because it seems like from the poskim that even if the witnesses did not see the loan at all, they would still be allowed to sign sign the shtar if they're in the presence of both the creditor and the debtor. Because the delivery of the shtar isn't in and of itself the generation of a debt as if a kinyan had been made. And it's just as if a handkerchief was transferred. That is the transfer of the shtar. And therefore, let's say you have both a debtor and a creditor present in front of you, and the debtor says, I'm going to be transferring over this shtar, this promissory note, over to my creditor. The witnesses don't have to actually see money change hands. All they have to see is this mechanism of indebtedness take place, which is the transfer of the shtar. So therefore, we have to sort of modify, it's not literally that they actually have to witness cash being transferred. Let's say, especially in today's world, let's say it's going to be an e-transfer. So therefore, we tell the witnesses, you guys, you don't have to watch as I go on my iPhone and transfer $10,000 from my account to his account. That you don't have to see. All you have to see is that he's giving me a promissory note because he's satisfied that I've given him the money. And once you see him giving me the piece of paper, then sign the piece of paper so that you're witnesses to the fact that this is a valid mechanism. So therefore, that's the way you have to understand it. Let's see. Now, the last thing we learned in this sif, and I don't think we're going to go through the biurim on this one. The last thing that we're going to see, last thing we saw in the sif was that when witnesses sign a moda'a certificate, Now, what is a moda'ah certificate? It's where a person has performed a transaction, but then afterwards wishes to gather witnesses together to let them know that he did so under duress, and he wishes to undo that process. Is there something in Latin for that term?
Well, I guess it's not minus back, and it's not my agreement. That kind of thing. You can say sometimes you put on the back on a check or something, put under protest. You put someone pressuring you to pay something, so you put on the back of the check, paid under protest. There's an indication at least that you've done it that way. But I guess the concept would be either where you're taking away the person's consent, economic duress or physical duress or undue influence, that kind of.
Right. So that's what a moda'ah is. It's an expression of that I did this under duress. He says dekaimalan. So and basically what we said in this sif was you can't sign a statement of protest or a statement of duress unless you actually know that it was under duress. In other words, just because the guy says, "Oh, I'm feeling so stressed," that doesn't mean anything. You have to know the circumstances. So anyway, let's clarify this. The kaimalan misha ansuhu ad shemochar v'lokach demei hamekach. That if a person was so pressured, either physically or otherwise, we're not, we have to look at the parameters. So he was forced to sell something or forced to buy something. Afilu haya ones gadol shetaluhu ad shemochro mimkaro mimkol mimkaro memkar. Even if this was an extreme type of coercion, let's say they hung a guy up on a tree and they said, "We're going to keep you there until you sell us this item." So we paskin that if he sells it, it's a valid sale. Ach imosar moda'a kodem shemocha. However, there's one exception. If he informs two witnesses before he sells the item, and he tells them, "Va'amar lishnei edim, du'u shezeh sha'ani mocher chayfetz ploni, asoda ploni leploni, u'mipnei ones." I hereby inform you that I am going to be selling my field or my house or whatever it is to so-and-so, but I do so under duress. I'm not doing so willingly. Harei hamecher batel. If you do that in advance of the sale, then you can nullify the sale. Ve'alzeh ka'amar kan, ditzrichim ha'edim leida shehu mocher rak mipnei ha'ones. And this is where the Rav Shulchan Aruch is telling me that the Edim need to actually know that there is duress, v'shehu anus vadai, and that he really is under duress. V'lo yismuchu al piv. They should therefore not just rely on his statement. Ela tzrichim ladas me'atzmam bibirur onso. They have to know what the nature of the onus is. Now, this is very difficult for me to understand. Guy goes over to two guys and he says, "Listen, I'm about to sell my house. I don't want to sell my house, but I'm being pressured into selling it." Well, what's the pressure? Well, they're offering me 50% more than the market value. That's not pressure. That is not duress. That is everyone has a price, right? That's not duress. What duress means is that they've threatened to either they've threatened bodily harm, or they've threatened to expose a dark secret about me to the public, or some other kind of nefarious kind of thing. So the witnesses have to have some inkling of knowledge. It's not clear how much knowledge they have to have, but it can't just be based on his own words. They have to know the circumstances, which, by the way, is very difficult because like there are many situations where how are the witness supposed to know that his life was threatened? I mean, usually when someone threatens your life, they don't put an ad in the paper, right? They do so very, very quietly. Yeah. So a Mesiras Moda'ah has been seriously curtailed. But I guess the logic to this whole thing is that if we allowed a person to do a moda'ah without the witness's personal knowledge of why he's making his moda'ah, then anyone could pull this shtick, right? He could sell something and then say afterwards, I wasn't serious about it. And here are my witnesses who I said, I told them I was under duress. Well, yeah, but what was your duress? Oh, someone threatened me. Well, who threatened you? I never threatened you. What are you talking about? Right? So you see that this could, so it does seem reasonable that if you want to be able to undo a legal act of transaction, you have to be able to demonstrate to the witnesses why this is a legitimate protest. Yeah. Right. Here, the halacha states that it has to be done before the fact. That's right. That's right. Right. So you're going back to when we first started. This is you have a very good memory, Paul. Right. When a transaction has already been consummated, then you can't go back on the deal, even if the reason why you made the transaction is no longer applicable. Like, I sold my house, I signed the contract, and the purchaser has made the down payment, has gone through all of the due process. Right. Then you can't go back to the buyer and say, my aliyah plans fell through. I'd like you to give me the house back. Sorry. There was no contingency built into the sale that said that it's only a sale if you make aliyah. You can't do that. What we were talking about is the concept of mechusar amana, a person acting in bad faith. We know that if two people have a verbal agreement, we said that even though either party is technically permitted to withdraw from a verbal agreement, but you would be called a mechusar amana, acting in bad faith, if you go back on even a verbal agreement. So you and I sit in the back of the shul during the rabbi's speech one day, and we agree that I'm going to buy your car, right? Nit Shabbos Goret, right? Like, as the old story goes, right? So Nit Shabbos Goret, we have a deal. Good, we have a deal. $5,000. Good, $5,000. After Shabbos, you come over to me and say, I thought I was going to sell you my car, but my wife basically said, it ain't happening. She's very attached to that car, so I'm really sorry. So I could call you a mechusar amana. You're acting in bad faith because we were negotiating in good faith, and now you've acted in bad faith. You didn't say that you had to ask your wife, right? So it's not nice to be a mechusar amana. But halachically, do I have any legal recourse against you? No. Now, that stigma of being a mechusar amana, that's where this thing with aliyah came in, only applies when you don't have a legitimate reason for backing out of the deal. But if your circumstances change, and many times there are legitimate circumstances that change, I can't accuse you of being a mechusar amana, of acting in bad faith.
Price, you realize that after Shabbos, you check the price in the market. 7,000 for 5,000. Are you allowed to change it, or
You're not supposed to. No, you have to be a man of your word. If you do change the price later, you can't be compelled and based in to stick with your original price, but you will be called in the chusar amana. You're acting in bad faith.
what about the other side?
You're not being a mensch.
What about the other guy? The guy who's buying, he knows his bargain. It's very cheap. You don't know.
Well, so there is this concept of ona. You see, we did all of these.
Yeah.
We did all of these laws a couple of years ago we started. That was at the beginning of the Imrei Yaakov, where we did the laws of ona. And if there's an absolute blue book price, and I'm ripping you off, then you do have legal recourse. In other words, even though you agreed to the price, but if it was because you were ignorant of the real value, then you do have legal recourse in Beis.
I didn't mean to open the whole can of worms, but some of this sounded just a little bit familiar and going back on. Here, how it's very different. This is much later in the stage.
That's correct. That's correct. Okay. So I'm a little bit disappointed that there's no expansion on this concept, but I guess what you have to say is the witnesses have to have some source of corroborating the duress other than just the guy's words, because otherwise a person could take advantage of this halacha and really wreak havoc. Okay, let's go on. V'chein srichim ha'edem lihizaher. This is in Siv Chaf Daled. The witnesses have to similarly be careful. Shelo yachtamu al shum shtarcho ad shiyakiru v'yedu shezehu shemo. They have to be sure that when they sign a promissory note or any kind of transactional contract, they have to verify the identities of the two parties. Shel love, they have to identify the name of the debtor. V'lo yismechu alav she'omer shekach shemo. They shouldn't just rely on him that this is his name, because what if a guy comes forward and says, "Oh yeah, my name is John Smith," or yeah, that's right. Or in this situation, I could say, "My name is Marvin Huberman, and I'm going to indebt myself to Errol, right? And I'm going to owe him money." And then I sign the contract. I sign Marvin Huberman, and the witnesses say, "Oh, it's Marvin Huberman." So we witnessed Marvin Huberman indebting himself to Errol Sutner, right? So in that kind of situation, this could be a miscarriage of justice, right? So you have to verify. How do we do that today? Well, the witnesses, if they don't recognize the parties, they have to ask for some identification. How do I know that you're Marvin Huberman? Can I see your driver's license, please? Photo ID is how you verify it. And by the way, people snicker when I do this, but when we do the mechiras chametz with the Gentile that we use every year before Pesach, I require the Gentile to please pull out his photo ID and show it to the Beis Din that is presiding over the sale, so that they understand that this is the person who he says he is. It's because of this halacha. Yeah. Yeah. So how do you verify someone's identity? So let's see. They can't just take his word for it that this is his name. So he says, because maybe they're trying to create some kind of fraud where they're going to put forward someone else's name and put it in this promissory note. And maybe there was some collusion that was done with the creditor, right? So there's three guys. There's Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Reuven and Levi collude to defraud Shimon. So Levi says, "My name is Shimon, and pulls over two witnesses and says, I'm hereby indebting myself for $10,000 to Reuven because he e-transferred me some cash, or he gave me cash yesterday, and I told him I'm going to draw up the promissory note. Please witness the fact that I, Shimon, am in debt to Reuven for $10,000. So they're colluding to defraud Shimon of $10,000, when in reality Shimon doesn't owe $10,000. Period. Now, furthermore, now let's say a debt is being paid back, and the debtor calls forward two witnesses and says, I'd like you to witness the fact that I am giving a receipt to the malva, to the creditor, that the debt has been paid. So they have to verify that this, or the malva says, please draw up a receipt that I've been paid in full. And the reason is kishema asa kinyunya im halova al ish acher sheshmo kain. So because maybe what happened is that the borrower, the creditor, wants to collude. Let's say a case where Shimon and Levi collude together to defraud Reuven. Reuven has lent Shimon $10,000. Shimon doesn't want to pay back the $10,000. So he colludes with Levi, and Levi brings over two witnesses and says, please document that my name is Reuven, and please write up a document that I've been paid in full. Right? That's what a shover is. It's a receipt. So in that kind of situation, again, collusion to defraud the creditor this time of the money that is owed to him. And in reality, the debtor still owes him the money. So you see how fraud could be perpetrated if witnesses innocently sign a document thinking that the person they're dealing with is that person when it's really not. And similarly, when there's a bill of sale, they have to know that the person who's representing himself as the seller is the seller. Because maybe they're defrauding a person by drawing up a bill of sale that says that I hereby sold you my property, and they put in Reuven's name, and Reuven is not present. And Reuven has no idea that people have written up. It's like selling the Brooklyn Bridge, right? You got to know, right? What's the story about, I got a bridge to sell you, right? You have to know, not only do you have to know that you own the Brooklyn Bridge, but you have to know that you're the person that you say you are.
People actually go into the institutional lenders and get their view, fool them, and actually take out mortgages on your property.
Right.
They get the money, and then you end up with a big mortgage on your property. You don't even know it's there.
And so how do they pull that off? Do they make up photo ID?
Yeah, it's all fraud. Yeah, they have fake driver's license. They're very sophisticated.
That's horrible. I know. I've heard about that. Protect yourself from identity fraud.
You have to get insurance
So-
against them.
Yeah.
All right, I have to leave a little bit early today, so I'm going to call the class now, and we'll continue Mirz Hashem tomorrow.